Idol worship is dangerous. Worshipping idols is very spiritually dangerous. It's dangerous one because it's offensive to God. Not a good hope that in and of itself could just be enough. I don't want to offend God. If you don't believe it, remember the 10 Commandments, kind of big deal. In the Bible, remember the first 2 of the 10 Commandments are all about idols. It's God saying, don't do this. So it's kind of big deal to God. And why is that? Why is God so offended by idols? Why does He want us to avoid idolatry so much? Because God knows that He alone is one true God, who is only the one who was worthy of worship. And He also knows that He's trying to protect us. Because when we get caught up in worshipping false little gods, when we got caught up in worshipping idols, it hurts us. It causes us to be stuck in endless cycle of searching after satisfaction and joy and peace and hope in these things that will never ultimately give it to us. God doesn't want us that. He wants us to have life to the full, and He knows that as long as we are chasing after the idols, we are never going to experience. Often when we think about idols, we think of those bad things in life. We think of things that are sort of overtly sinful. I don't want to have an idol, so maybe it's some sort of chemical or substance abuse. And they say, yeah, that's an idol. You shouldn't have that addiction in your life. Or maybe it's some sort of sexual sin, immorality, or pornography, or something like that. And you say there's an idol you don't want to have in your life. Or maybe it's something like this drive for power or status or money or greed. These things we see as kind of negative. And we say, I don't bow down to those idols. And that's so true. Those are definitely idols, and we should not bow down to those things. But those aren't the only kind of idols in this world. And in our lives, in fact, what we are talking about today is how there are many seemingly good things that can become idols. You see anything no matter what it looks like, because there are a lot of good things that seem good in the surface, and they might be in and of themselves kind of good thing, but if they start to creep up and take a higher place in our life than God, well, then that thing is an idol. Anytime something that is a good thing becomes the ultimately thing, well, that is an idol. Unbelievably serious, it starts out in a culture in the way it works with us to be unbelievably innocent, but in the end, overwhelmingly destructive. And let me explain to you how it happens. Idolatry in your heart and in my heart starts with a desire, and the desire isn't inherently wicked or wrong, alright? We have a desire to have a nice house. We have a desire to drive a nice car. We have a desire to have a relatively in shape body. I was very careful there. We have a desire for our kids to excel in athletic. Because what will our legacy be if they are not professional athlete? Christ save us. Now we have a desire that we have money in the bank. We have a desire that we are safe. We have a desire that things are most ways easy for us. We have a desire that our kids get a good education. We have a desire, and those things, there is nothing wrong with any of those things. Nothing. It's not wrong to want a nice house. It's not wrong, not sinful. It's not wrong nor sinful to want your kids to be safe. I mean, come on. It's not wrong and sinful to want things to be relatively easy. It's not wrong or not sinful. None of us. It's not wrong nor sinful to be in shape or want to look good. It's not wrong or sinful. It starts with a desire, like think of it, this thing in the palm of our hands. It starts at a simple desire, and then over time, the hand begins to close. And we say, this is no longer negotiable, and then all of a sudden, the nice house is non-negotiable. The nice car is non-negotiable. Safety is non-negotiable. Our kids' athletic careers is non-negotiable. Money in the pocket in the bank, non-negotiable. And now you have a birthing an idol. And what ends up happening is, as we say, God, do whatever you want. God, be who you are, but don't touch this, don't touch this, don't touch work. Because in work I find achievement and I find self-value, so I do whatever you say, but I'm not quitting this job. Don't risk my kids, do whatever you want, but I want my kids to be safe. Do whatever you want, but I want my neighborhood to be safe. Do whatever you want, but I want, and what ends up happening is that hand closes, that we say this no longer negotiable. It's no longer negotiable, and an idol has been born now. Here's what happens. Here's what's so devastating. What happens in that moment is you're given an unbelievable amount of authority to whatever that desire is. So much authority have you given to this desire that people and things become a means to this end. So what I would say is that if work is the idol, then all of a sudden people at work are viewed by you and thought by you, whether you like it or not, as a means to your progression of the ladder. An idol is anything that you worship. An idol is anything that you give the strength to, that you give the affection and your attention to. It's what you use yourself to as the priority and the precedence in your life. Now I know we all say that we love God and we put Him first, but our actions show the real priority of our life, and so sometimes we can get things jumbled. We can get mixed up. I understand that the most of us don't have shrines in our homes or in our offices, but that does not eliminate the possibility that we have erected idols in our life. Do you realize that you can worship someone or something by simply paying too much attention to it? But honestly, idolatry, it takes precedence over everything. It takes precedence over spiritual health. It takes precedence over, you name it. It just draws it. It draws it. It draws the wallet. It draws the life. It draws the weekends. Now here's why it's so devastating. Why idolatry rules the heart of man. They do not, in the end, want an all-knowing, all-loving, omnipotent God of the universe who gives and He sees it. They want instead a divine waitress to fetch them they want. So, why don't men yearn for the Lord? Why don't men pursue Him? Why don't men and women cling to His feet? I have to wonder if the reason to few of us do is the reason that we have an idol in our hearts and in our fear is that if we draw near to Him, He will address this thing and it's non-negotiable for us. And so then what we do, and the good thing about it, the good thing about this is we are in the Bible Belt, and so you can just go to the church and pretend all the days of your life. That's great news. All you have to do is learn when you raise your hand what part of the song you got to join the Bible study or a small group. That's all you got it, and you are in. That's how idolatry happens. And it's the reason we stay away from Lord. Because we are afraid if we press into Him, He's gonna address the thing. Because in the end, we value it more than value Him, and we think in the end that is more beautiful and more necessary. So a person can be an idol in your life if you spend your life trying to impress that person, trying to win their love, their attention, their affection more than you try to impress God, more than you want to win the love of God, or give the attention and the affection to God. It's not wrong to have people in your life. In fact, we need people. God made us for covenant. He made us for connection, but when a person becomes our priority over God, then we get into an ungodly soul tie. Because you are putting pressure on them, you are trying to get something out of them, and they're not even capable of giving you. It becomes an idol when you allow someone's opinion to determine your value, when you allow their perception to determine or validate who you are. That's where you begin to open the door to living for someone else, depending on them for your source instead of depending on God to be your source. And so what happens when you allow other people to validate you? When you allow what you do or what you have or relationship that you are in. And I'm talking about just in the context of marriage. It can be a pastorship relationship. It can be a friend relationship. It can be a worker, a boss relationship. It can be all different contexts. It can be marriage. It can be very different type of situation. But when you allow man's opinion to validate you and give you your value over what God says, then it becomes an ungodly soul tie and it becomes an idol. Because you are looking to them and the source of life, instead we are looking to the one who is your source of life. And so by yielding your strength, by yielding your affection, and all of us have probably followed prey, all of us have become vulnerable in these areas. But when I yield myself to that becomes an idol in my life. It's an idol, and while we need and we desire people in our life, nothing should take priority over God's presence. And while it's good to have relationships, while it's good to have things that are going to complement us, God says, I'm going to be your source of life. I'm going to be your life's giver. Because it's not what happens when you get entangled in a relationship and you get meshed in one. Then their ups and downs become the ups and downs. So when they are high, you high. They are low, you are low. You're caught in the whirlwind of craziness and confusion. Because when the enemy wants to mess up your destiny, he robs you of your spiritual identity. So you find the essence of you, who you are, wrapped up in things, wrapped up in the people, but the devil is a liar. You're not what you went through, and you are not what other people say about you. You are who God says you are. You can do what God says you can do. Therefore it says God opposes the proud. God opposes the proud. God opposes the proud. But He gives grace to the humble. The other side, the other reason, the other piece of idolatry, this other reason why I believe man and woman don't fully pursue and passionately chase the creator of all things is the idea of this thing, pride, and I could define it just simply as self-exaltation, thinking more highly of yourself than you should. And here's how it plays among the evangelical community race. Here's how it plays itself. In the end, we believe that we are smart enough, wise enough, clever enough, and good enough. So we view ourselves not in desperate need of grace in the things of God, but rather a tool in the hands of God to correct and help others. That's how it is. It's how it plays out. How it plays, I have no idea how God doesn't rain down fire. Because here's the lesson, we bring this full cycle where we're going with all of this. It's simply this challenge: the sooner you can identify those things in your life that might be creeping up to idol status, the sooner you can identify those things and deal with this, the better off you are gonna be. God's warning is stop wasting your life chasing after this poor idol that will never ultimately satisfy. Don't waste your best years of energy and passion and resources pursuing this thing that will only let you down. There's only one thing that is worthy of pursuing, and that is God. Because only God will ultimately fulfill and satisfy you.